Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Marcos Villegas, and welcome to the Fight Up TV live chat. Today is Monday, August 23rd, 2021, and we are coming off this Manny Pacquiao versus Yordenis Ugas fight back in California, but soon to get taken away to the land of Cleves in Cleveland for this Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley fight that we're going to bring you full coverage coming this week, which those two fight on Sunday. But this show is going to be all about Manny Pacquiao and Yordenis Ugas digesting what we saw on Saturday night, where Manny Pacquiao should go from here, if he should retire or continue, where Ugas goes from here, and just overall our thoughts on the fight. I'm going to bring in the Fight Up TV team in a bit, and we are also going to be joined by Abel Sanchez to share his thoughts on the fight. I want to say hello to everybody on the chat. Do us a huge favor. Share this, press the like button, and announce your presence on the chat, as we're going to get to some of your comments. And of course, if you want us to answer your comments or respond to you right away, go ahead and use the super chat function. So I was in Vegas the whole week along with the Fight Up team. It's like we all formed Voltron, as Floyd Mayweather said to his bodyguards for that McGregor press conference in New York back in 2017. It was great to have the full team in full force, and I think we had a very successful weekend. And coming into the fight, I honestly thought, just based on what I saw of Manny Pacquiao in training and what I saw of Yordenis Ugas from his prior two fights, which I scored on television, that Manny would win the fight. Because in those last two fights, Ugas got hit a lot. He took a lot of unnecessary risks. And I felt overall he was just a little too slow for someone like Manny. Man, was I wrong? I think a big part in this is Ugas really pulled from his experience of being a very highly accomplished amateur. He had, I want to say, close to 500 amateur fights, and really displayed that Cuban school. And, you know, what's interesting is Ismael Salas, who's Ugas' trainer, did an interview earlier in the week, and they asked him, hey, aren't you worried? You know, you had a whole camp preparing for a righty, and you're having, a guy like Manny Pacquiao, and you only have about a week notice. And Salas said, no, we're not worried, because Ugas has so much amateur experience that, he's a master at fighting southpaws. He's going to draw from that experience. Now, don't get me wrong, Ugas is not a guy who's not good. He should have won against Sean Porter. I scored that fight for Ugas. It was a very close fight. Don't get me wrong. It could have gone either way. I just felt that Ugas edged it that night. And, because of that, Ugas, I think everybody should show him a lot more respect, a lot more credit. He went in there and really outboxed Manny Pacquiao. That, you can make an argument that he showed his age. You can make an argument that he was off a little bit, didn't have enough time to prepare. But at the end of the day, Ugas got it done. Ugas had the same amount of time to prepare for Manny Pacquiao as Manny Pacquiao did. He just was too big, a little too rangy, and a lot more accurate for Manny Pacquiao. They're ringside. I wasn't in my usual position, so I don't know how the other score that Fox uses, Lerald Hazard, scored it. I'm not sure who he had it for, but I wasn't in my usual position. But for a majority of the fight, I had Ugas ahead, and then Manny started to kind of climb back into the fight. And then around round 10, I had it even. And then, I gave round 11 to Manny, and then round 12 to Ugas, and I had a draw. But, I was not super far away, but not in my usual position. When I score fights for TV, I'm right there. I'm like about 20 feet away from the ring. So I get to see things a lot closer than being on press row when I'm doing my media duties. And with that said, though, I feel like a dummy because, I owe an apology, not an apology, but like, I just feel like I shouldn't have overlooked Ugas the way I did, just given his background, the skills that he's had being a Cuban fighter, he displayed it on full display, and Manny's always had trouble with guys that are rangy and have a jab. Floyd did it to him in their fight. And you got to think as well, even though Errol Spence is a southpaw, he is rangy, though Errol Spence likes to mix it up and get on the inside more than a Yordenis Ugas. But, hats off to Ugas in that first round. I'm sitting there and I just had this feeling like Ugas is going to win this. Like this jab is giving Manny problems, like it's already looking bad for Manny. And yeah, he was having trouble. A lot of people have stated and feel that that wasn't the same Manny that they're used to seeing. That wasn't a Manny that was fluid, that showed a lot of his footwork, that was in and out and creating angles. Manny after the fight stated that he just couldn't move. He couldn't move, and that he feels like his heart feels like he could keep going, but maybe his body just is not responding like he used to. Manny saying that he felt cramps right away after the second round. And Manny's an old school guy, and like I always wondered this about like his recovery. Like I remember I asked Justin Fortune one time about this. I'm like, hey, we never see Manny doing ice baths. We never see Manny like bringing in physical therapists like for recovery. Like why is that? And he told me like, hey, Manny doesn't really believe in that. He's an old school guy. It's just sleep for him. And I don't know. I don't know if it would benefit him or if it would help at all. But Manny being 42, one of these fights, age was going to show up, and maybe this was the fight when age showed up. Definitely, if this fight was fought maybe 5 years ago, it would have been a different outcome. It would have been a much different Manny Pacquiao. But Pacquiao is in a position where it sounds like he's seriously considering retirement after the fight. He strongly hinted that that was the course, the way he was going to go. I know being around the camp of Manny and talking to the people that are close to him, they told me that Manny had a one fight option left with PBC, that they're hoping to get one more fight in November, December, and then allow him to go if he decided to run for the presidency of the Philippines, to go start his campaign around January and February. Some people still there in the camp that I talked to that Sunday when I ran into them at the MGM still feel that Manny will be able to squeeze out one more fight. Manny, years and years ago, I remember told us in the it's like the VIP room of the MGM Grand. He had told us that he had wanted his last fight to be in the Philippines, a going away fight, and that he said he would try to do something like that. And I think Manny's is such a competitor. I don't think he's gonna want to end it on a loss. He may have a farewell fight in the Philippines, but it's looking like maybe this may have been the last time that we see Manny fight in the United States. At this point, I think it's 50-50. If you were to ask me personally, if I'd want to see Manny continue fighting, I would say I don't want to see him continue fighting against elite fighters that can hurt him and damage him for the rest of his life. I'd like to see him go off on a win against an opponent that he could win as more of like a farewell fight, to just thank everybody, to get a proper send off, because I would like him to ride off in the sunset, like like Indiana Jones and his pops and Solace and Marcus Brody did at the end of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, just kind of ride off into the sunset and a road of glory. And honestly, I would have loved for him to have retired after the Thurman fight. I would have thought that would have been the perfect moment for him to go and retire after the Thurman fight, getting such a tremendous win over someone as young as and dangerous as Keith Thurman. But at this point, maybe 60-40 towards retirement. Even Freddie Roach admitted in the post-fight press conference that maybe it is that time. And I know him and Manny have an agreement with each other when Freddie tells him, hey, I think it's time that Manny said he will retire. Freddie says he'll retire too, but I don't know. I could still see Freddie continuing to train fighters even after Manny retires from the fight game. Man, Manny at age 42, what a legacy, what a figure in the world of boxing. Honestly, I don't think we're gonna ever see someone like a Manny Pacquiao ever again. What he did, it's gonna be near impossible to go ahead and duplicate. Seeing a little guy, a flyweight going all the way up to junior middleweight, winning titles in 8 divisions. It's almost impossible. It's hard enough to be a 3 division world champion. Being a 4-time welterweight champion and holding a title in 4 different decades. People forget that he started his professional career when he was 16 years old. That's why he's able to go ahead and have that record of being holding a world title in 4 different decades. It's extremely difficult to find guys like that. I think the only other guy that is active who's high profile is Canelo, that started fighting at age 16. I can't think of anybody else who's active right now who's high level that started that young. And maybe Canelo has a shot of joining that club. It depends on how well he takes care of himself, how well he lives outside of the ring, how well he's proactive in keeping his body in optimal shape. Danny, thank you for the super chat. Do you think Manny did too much road work? I always wondered, not about the road work, because in the other camps that I've covered with Manny, he's done a lot more road work, and this was the first time that he didn't run as much. There was a lot of days that he didn't run in this camp, and just from my experience, and I'm not saying I'm like an expert, but I on and off boxed for 10 years, and I would never stretch out my hips, and because of that, I started getting a lot of injuries. My left calf. I'm a southpaw too. My left calf would always get tight, would always cramp up, and none of my boxing trainers could figure it out. They just said like, "Hey, you're not stretching enough," and I'm like, "Dude, I'm stretching. Like, what the heck?" I remember one day I threw a straight left, and I went stiff. I couldn't move, and I'm like, "What the heck is going on here?" I went to a physical trainer. He told me it was the hip. And he said, "Hey, yeah, a lot of boxers encounter this problem. They don't know. They don't stretch out their hips." The moment I started stretching out my hips, doing hip stretching exercises, doing hip flexibility exercises, all that pain went away, because after hitting a bag or after sparring, I'd be so stiff, it'd be uncomfortable to lay on my bed. It was that bad. I was having all sorts of problems. All that went away within a month after doing those hip exercises and hip rotations and hip flexibility exercises. I've told a few fighters to go ahead and do that. That they've told me that they've had similar problems, and they're just like, "Oh my God, this all went away." And I'm really, really thinking that maybe, because I've never really seen him stretch his hips. To be honest, I've seen him try to stretch his calves, but I haven't seen him stretch his hip. Manny does a lot of strenuous road work and preparation for his fights. That maybe that's causing some of that cramp pain that he's had over the years. So it remains to be seen. I don't know, man, if he was doing that. Yeah, dude, you're laughing, but Pilates really does help you out. I'm gonna go ahead and message Abel. He's late. He was supposed to be here at 5:45, but with that, I'm gonna go ahead and bring in the Fight Up TV team, Yair and Marcus Hayes. What's up, guys?
What up?
You guys were there for the fight. Just overall, and there he is, Mr. Abel Sanchez, coming in right in on time. All right, well, I'll get your guys' take in a bit, but we're gonna go ahead and let Abel Sanchez in here. Without further ado, a badass trainer, a good guy in general, Mr. Abel Sanchez. Abel, welcome to the show. How's it going?
How are you guys?
I'm good.
Good to be here.
All right,
Coach.
I'm babysitting, so you'll hear some baby's noise every once in a while.
Oh, no worries, Abel. Let's get right to it, man. What did you think of Manny? Oh, who's that?
That's my granddaughter.
Oh, hello.
What is that?
What's her name?
Her name is Cora May. She's 1.5 years.
Cora May, hello.
Hey, baby girl.
She's like, what is this?
She's shook.
Hey, Abel, what did you think of Pacquiao versus Ugas?
To be honest with you, I didn't see it.
Oh, no, Abel.
I've seen enough fights to last me a lifetime. But I did read about it. I talked to Lem about it.
Yeah.
And you know what? Everything has to come to an end, man. He's given us a lot of thrills. Now I hope Ugas does well. He's put himself in a great position in that welterweight division. It's a hot division, and he's made himself a player.
When you look at him losing at age 42 and him saying in his post-fight press conference that, hey, he just couldn't respond the way he could. He felt cramps in the second round. You as a trainer, what do you think? Because Freddie says, hey, maybe it's that time.
You know, when they unfortunately that day comes, and it's not because he grew old in one day. He's been growing old. I mean, he's, like you said, he's 42 years old. But I'm sure Freddie in the corner or even in the gym as they were preparing for this fight knew what he had in front of him, knew the situation, knew the Manny that he had in the past, knew the Manny that he had in the last fight. So you deal with it as best you can, and hopefully it doesn't affect you in the fight. But as you say, Manny's legs weren't cooperating, and that happens, man. It happens to all of us.
It is okay. So when you hear a fighter complain about cramps in their calves, what do you do as a trainer? Like, what's your assessment of that?
Yeah, age, maybe wear and tear, maybe you know. I go back to when Oscar was in my gym training for his last fight against Manny. He trained in my gym, and there was a lot of running up here. There was a lot more running than I would have done. There was very, very little sparring, which in my opinion should have been what should have been done most. And in the fight, his legs didn't respond either. So sometimes, and it's not Freddie to be watching him every day. I'm sure he goes out and runs the mountains up there like he's always done. But there comes a point where you have to diminish the workload. As with Golovkin, probably the last 8 fights that I had Golovkin, I only sparred him like anywhere from 75 to 80 rounds per fight. I didn't run him that much. I tried to maintain as much as I could in him so that we'd peak at the fight. So you know, there's a lot of things that could have been the reason.
Yeah, Manny's always done those mountains up there in Griffin Park, and that's not an
Yes.
easy run. That's a very, very hard run. And you know, even though he missed a lot more days than he did in the Thurman camp, he was still pretty consistent doing that mountain run about 2-3 times a week.
He's not 18 years old no more. He's 42. You know, he's 42. So you have to take that into consideration. Sometimes it's not how much you run or how long you run, it's how hard you run it. It'd be better to run half as much in a little quicker time so he gets the wind in his lungs. But you have to conserve a little bit when you get that old. I mean, we all do.
I don't know if you've seen Ugas's past fights. You know, he kind of threw me off because in those 2 past fights, I just felt he got hit a lot. He took a lot of unnecessary risk. Maybe it was because the level of competition. They weren't guys like a Sean Porter that he fought, you know, I think like 3 or 4 fights before. You know, the last fight was against Abel Ramos, and a lot of people felt that Abel Ramos should have won that fight. And I think that threw me off. And in the back of my mind, I should have thought like, hey, he's going to draw on his experience of having over 500 amateur fights and being a bronze medalist as well.
Yeah, well, I saw clips of his last fight, and when I talked to Lem, I was able to make my opinion or make my what I thought was going to happen in the fight based on what he did with Ramos. And you're right, Ramos came close to winning that fight. He didn't. Ugas didn't look extraordinary. I mean, extra special. But with Manny, you know, when you fight the big guys, you get up for the fights. And Manny had that day that he wasn't completely sharp, and Ugas had a great day because he was fighting Manny. That's why I say Ugas has to capitalize on the fact that now he's a player, and hopefully he gets the kind of fights that he deserves after this win. I think Manny's fight against Spence would have been a little bit different. It could have been a letdown with Ugas too. I mean, you know, there's a lot of reasons why that could have been something. It could have been something mental too.
What do you think mental?
Mental because he's not fighting. I mean, he's fighting the fight against Spence is a fight that would crown him the king forever if he beats Spence and then retires. Against Ugas, he fights a fight that really means nothing to nobody.
In that first round, I told everybody, I just had this feeling like, oh man, like I think Manny's gonna lose. Like he's getting in touch with that jab. Like Ugas is just moving out of the way of his punches. He looks he looked like a middleweight in there, and then the reach. I think that was a big thing in this fight. It was the reach of Ugas, man. He had a reach that Manny couldn't even touch him at times.
Yeah, well, go back and watch the Manny De La Hoya fight, and you'll see De La Hoya as Manny Pacquiao in this fight. I saw clips of it, just so you know. I mean, I didn't see the whole thing, but Manny is De La Hoya in their fight. I mean, just nothing was there. Just an old man at that point.
Oh man, well, he had a close and competitive fight with Manny. I think if he could still beat the elite. I don't know. I still have a weird feeling, and I pitched this to Freddie, but Freddie, I don't think likes the fight because of the name value. I honestly think that Manny can beat a Josh Taylor, and I think that would be a great way for him to go and fight the undisputed champ at 140 pounds and potentially beat him.
Can Manny make 140 without killing himself?
Freddie's always said that 47 is not his weight.
Yeah, but 6 pounds, when you've matured into that weight, honestly, it's difficult to. I mean, you can go up to 54 a lot easier than you can go, obviously, down to 40. When you've matured at that weight, he's an older man. It's difficult to bring the weight off correctly. When you're younger, you can sweat it off. When you're a little bit older, his muscles are already formed. Everything is. He's a mature man. It would be difficult, in my opinion, for him to do it safely.
No, it's funny because, and maybe you could relate with this with Gennady, but I remember specifically and vividly Canelo and Manny, when they were at the lighter weights, they were always angry at the media days or when we're going to go into the gym with them. And for Manny, I remember Freddie telling me it's because, he has to cut weight. That's why he's grumpy. And I asked Canelo this too. I'm like, dude, you look so happy now. And like, I come to the gym and you'd always be pissed off. And I'm like, what the heck? And he's like, yeah, because I was cutting weight, dude. Like, that's why I always looked angry.
Yeah, it's not only Canelo and Manny, it's all of them, man. When you remember when they were losing the last 2 weeks before the fight, they're trying to cut 10 pounds, which is ridiculous to me. I've never liked that. I try not to allow that to happen, but they are cutting weight. And if you look at them a week before, when you saw them a week before the fight, and then you look at them on the scale, it's a totally different person. It's a skeleton on the scale. And then you look at them 2 hours later, and it's the same guy you saw a week before. It's not a good thing for them to do that. But yeah, they get very aggravated. They get very pissed off. Everything you say is against anything that they're thinking. There's nothing you can say to them because you're not the one struggling.
That was what Victor Ortiz looked like this week. He was super gaunt, man. He was gaunt. He looked like he dropped every bit of weight. He looked like he was barely there.
Yeah. Well, you remember when Brandon Rios used to fight at 135. You remember when he got
all white.
It was
Coach
sad to
Abel.
see, really.
Yeah, seriously.
Coach Abel,
Brandon would have a bad weight cut. I remember he said he didn't eat for like 4 days in a row for one of these fights. Yeah, I remember that. Go ahead, Yair.
Yeah, sorry, Coach Abel, thanks again for being part of the show. I was told, I forgot to mention it to the team, I was told that during the sparring sessions in the last few weeks before leading up to the fight, Manny had to pause and get foot massages during the rounds of sparring because he was having a lot of cramps. In your situation, if that was happening, in your camp, what would it have done differently, or how could you handle that? Somebody, a very credible source told me that, and I'll tell the team later, but how would that be handled?
Okay, when was the last time that he fought?
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Okay, 2 years ago, and you're trying to get ready for a Spence. Now, these cramps this situation didn't happen in the last 3 weeks. It's something that's been happening for the last 3 or 4 months when he's been preparing for a guy like Spence.
No, longer than that. We've got documentation on Manny with cramps as far back as March 29th of 2015 in preparation for Floyd Mayweather. They wrote articles about how he was cramping in his lower half. So he's been cramping for years. So
even against Bradley.
So the names that we've mentioned, Floyd Mayweather, is that amateur kid or is that big pro? So when you're fighting a guy like that, and when you're fighting a guy like Spence, you push harder than you should. And unfortunately for For Manny, Manny really runs his own camp. I mean, other than the gym, obviously in the gym, Freddie runs it, but outside the gym, Freddie doesn't run with him. Freddie doesn't see him run. So he's running to try to prepare for Spence in a way that he did maybe when he was younger. And when he fought Floyd, he's preparing for Floyd. He's preparing for the best fighter in the world. So so you do things a little bit harder than maybe you should. And once it starts to cramp, once that starts, it's difficult for it to go away unless you rest it. There's no way it's going to go away unless you just take time off and rest it and make sure that you don't abuse it anymore. But once it starts, you're finished.
You know, Abel, you've trained a lot of fighters, a lot of legendary fighters as well. You know, Manny loves this so much. I'm worried that he won't want to retire. And you've, seen guys, and we've seen guys that, they boxing retires them. They don't go out on their own will. Why is it so hard for a fighter to let all this go?
It's difficult to have people stop calling you champ, calling you you being in at the fights, you being a special guest at a big event, and you want to be in that situation again. Lucky for Manny, though, I want to say this: lucky for Manny, he's got a career that he can go right into, where it's a career that is going to help his people, which he's always done. The politics that he's doing, so it could be easier for Manny than for a lot of other fighters. But the other fighters, they just want to be called champ. They just want to be with the boys. They just want to be in the gym. In fact, I'm sure that you've noticed that some fighters that were lackadaisical in the training when they were younger end up being probably the hardest worker in the gym when they get to be 35 and 36 and 37. They work harder than they did when they were younger. So they miss it. They know it's going away. That adulation from the fans is going to go away, and they're going to be normal people after that. So it's hard to lay it down.
Yeah, yeah, it is like getting, I don't know, just that adrenaline rush. Like, I don't know if you knew, but I walked out with you guys, with you and Gennady for 2 fights. I was like at the very, very back. You guys never noticed it, but I got a sense of like that adrenaline rush, and I was like, oh my God, like this is the coolest freaking feeling in the world. Like to get this whole arena just going crazy for you.
When we would walk out and they would play that song and everybody was screaming, you get goosebumps. Seriously, no matter how many times you do it, and that's what they miss. That's what they miss. Let me tell you a little story. Before really Gennady made it real big, we were at the MGM. I think we were there for a fight, maybe, or watching a fight. But anyway, Floyd was fighting Maidana. I think it was the first one at the MGM, and Gennady asked me to find out if we could get some tickets to sit way in the back where nobody would notice. He wasn't really a big star yet, but he had already been a champion, obviously. But he wanted to sit in the back and just experience that, exactly what you just said, about the goosebumps and the emotion of a big crowd. There was 20 some thousand people there that day, and it's called stage fright if you never experienced it before. And he was wise enough, a silver medalist in the Olympics for 350 amateur fights. He was wise enough to understand that he needed to experience that in some way before it actually happened to him. And we sat in the back row at the MGM, down by where the offices are, where the commission office is easily. We sat there from probably the second round till about the 11th or something like that, and then we walked out. There's some people that kind of noticed me and noticed him, but nobody really made a scene, so we were able to watch 8-9 rounds and hear the crowd, because the crowd was going nuts in that fight. Maidana was doing well, so. But yeah, they missed that. Once they retire, that's something that they just can't get away from.
Yeah, it's who knows what happens. Manny strong. It seemed like he pretty much already had his mind made up, but he didn't want to be emotional about it. Do you think he should continue fighting, Abel?
I think it's up to Manny. I don't think anybody has the right to tell somebody when they've devoted their life to a sport that really nobody understands how lonely the sport is for them. Nobody has the right to tell him when he should retire. The one that should make the decision is Manny and his wife and his doctor and his children. But there's a lot of fights that he could fight out there that does not necessarily mean Josh Taylor or Errol Spence or Terrence Crawford or anybody like that. There's a lot of fights out there that could be like a swan song for him. I think he deserves it. I think he's given us a lot of thrills, and I think he's deserving of that. To go out on a with a lot of ovations and a lot of that stuff, it's deserving for him.
Yeah, I like to see him go off on a win. To be honest, like I hate to see boxing retire fighters, like fighters like go out on like a knockout loss, even though I guess that's kind of how it is. Like you live by the sword, you die by the sword.
Absolutely.
But I would like for them to to go off on wins. And yeah, I'd like to see Manny go off right off to the sunset on a win against someone that's is good, but like, hey, Manny's gonna beat this guy.
Right, and I think that Manny been the kind of fighter that you want to see him do that.
Yeah,
he hasn't been that
that's
idiot
true.
or that a-hole that just wasn't good to the fans and wasn't good to his people and wasn't good to everybody around him. He's been other than the situation he had with 3 or 4 years ago with his wife. I mean, he's been really a model citizen.
Yeah, no, he has. In terms of his legacy, Abel, you've lived the game. Where do you think Manny ranks amongst the greats in the sport?
Well, there's only several fighters that have accomplished what he's accomplished as far as belts and as far as weight divisions. I think that he will be judged because he's handpicked his opponents. But the bottom line is, like I used to say with Golovkin, everybody used to say that we had a weak division in the middleweights, and I guess that was the only weak division ever in the history of the middleweights. Manny did the things that he did in weight divisions that nobody else has done, and it took him to be over 40 for somebody to dominate him. Yes, he got hit with a great shot by Muhammad, but everybody gets Muhammad Ali went down. Muhammad Ali went down several times. So I think that it took somebody in his 40s, when he was in his 40s, to beat him decisively like they did.
In terms of the future, Ugas is in a great position now with a lot of potential fights, but he called for an Errol Spence fight after the fight. And I think that fight makes sense. He has the belt. The fighters now, which I like, are wanting these unification and these undisputed fights. How do you think Ugas matches up with an Errol Spence?
Well, when I think I've said this before, but when the Olympics were over and Errol and some of those guys came out of that year, I thought that Errol and Marcus Brown were, for me, the leading candidates to be world champions in the professional game. Marcus Brown, unfortunately, has had some issues with his personal life and has been slowed down by it. But Errol's done everything that I thought he was going to do. He's a heck of a fighter, and I don't think he's even close to getting to his peak. I would like to see Ugas fight somebody else first, like defend it, but I'm afraid of the Ugas that fought Ramos showing up and him getting beat and not being able to cash out. But that's a great fight. It's a great fight for both guys. I think that Ugas would rise to the occasion because he is fighting a Spence.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the case. I think it remains to be seen, but I don't know. Maybe Ugas is a guy that he rises to the level of competition and he fights
Could
to the
be.
level of like the fighters that are in front of him.
Could be.
Yeah. Oh man, it's crazy to think that it's coming to an end because he's been so like ingrained with us for such a long time. And I tweeted this. It's like finally the end of the era of Floyd and Manny. Like I think Saturday was really, it stamped it. Like that's the end.
Well, funny you saying that because I didn't see this fight either, but I read about it several weeks ago. A young man named Ortiz fought, Virgil Ortiz.
Yeah.
He seems to be the real deal, man. He seems to be the next the next star in the horizon, I guess. I think he's only got like 18 or 19 fights, but wow. I saw a couple clips of him. I love the way he fights. I mean, that's the kind of fighter that I like to see. Attacks well. He's ferocious. Kind of a Duran kind of style, like Teofimo kind of when he fights. So those are the kind of fighters that the fans are going to get to watch, and I think it's going to be entertainment for the next 4 or 5 years for us.
Yeah, let Virgil loose, let Jerron Ennis loose. I really think Boots is going to be the standout.
Absolutely. Also, yes. The only thing is, Ennis hasn't really been on lately. I haven't heard about him fighting lately. But his brothers,
Sergey Lipinets.
He's what?
He just KO'd Sergey
Oh, is
Lipinets.
that right? Oh,
Yeah.
the heck of a fighter too. So if he did that, but I used to have his
No one
brother
else.
in my gym sparring with Gennady,
Oh
um,
wow.
and with another fighter that I had, and maybe with Kovalev. But yeah, he's got a couple brothers that used to be in my gym, and his father's a real nice man. So I'm real happy for that family to have a young man like that doing so well.
I know you don't watch a lot of fights, but I know for sure 110% you're going to be watching the fight this Sunday, right? Tyron Woodley and Jake Paul. Jake, you told me Jake Paul is like your favorite fighter, right, Abel?
Check this out. I got a big party. I got 150 people coming to my house.
Yeah,
Ooh.
that's what's up, Abel. Uh, you probably I don't know. I'm assuming you haven't seen any of Jake's fights, right?
No, his brother was in my gym sparring with that kid I had, Sergey Bohachuk.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, he's Sergey sparred with him, but they're listen, they're 4 and 6 round fighters. They're not. They should continue doing what they're doing because they're making money. I love it that somebody's making money and they found a niche where they can make money, but they have to understand who they are. I think that if they match them correctly, they can get to the point where maybe they learn on the job and they're good enough to fight for a title in the next 3 or 4 years. But by matching them right, they're going to learn on the job. That's great. I think that's good. They're making
Oh,
money.
wow.
They're
You're
making
you're
money.
one of the few boxing, like a lot of boxing guys like don't like them, don't like what they're doing. They think it's like besmirching the sport.
Listen, not enough of us, coaches included, not enough of us get to the point where we make a little bit of money to be at least be able to not have a job. And not talk to 90% of the fighters, none of them make enough money so that they don't have a job. What was that young man that fought from Coachella or from Indio that had worked for the General Electric or the
Oh,
electrical?
Cansancio,
Yeah,
Andrew
okay,
Cancio.
they all have a job. Now these kids are YouTubers or whatever you want to call them. They've learned how to market themselves, and maybe the other fighters can learn something from them. I'm not saying they should be fighting out of their league, but if they're making money, that's what this is all about, right? It's about making money.
They're making a ton of money, man. That's for sure. You know, a ton of money. Do you? A lot of people are picking him to beat Tyron Woodley. Like, are you familiar with Woodley and anything
No,
at all? No. Okay. Because I was going to ask you if you would be surprised if Jake Paul knocks out Tyron Woodley.
no, I'm not familiar with him, and I don't really watch major fights. I'm sure not going to watch that one, but as long as they understand what they're doing, as long as they understand what's that Andre Ward said, as long as they stay in their lane.
Mm.
As long as they
Dude,
stay in
Jake
their lane.
Paul's talking about wanting to fight. Like he's saying he'll be ready for Canelo in like 4 years, and I'm like, bro, no, like
Is this
stop.
from Canelo's in a wheelchair or what?
Maybe.
No, no. You know what? That's even the wrong name to be saying. If he's talking about somebody right now that's not on that level, then okay, then maybe I could say in 3 or 4 years by nurturing him on the job and learning on the job and him fighting, stepping up every time. He may be because he's going to get to work in the gym. It's not only the fights; he's getting in 3 or 4 years. He'll have a lot of rounds in the gym with a lot of good fighters along the way, and he's going to learn. But to talk about Canelo is like talking about he'd be ready for Floyd if he was the same weight. Those guys are on a different level, man.
Yeah, no, and they've been boxing their whole like you can't
Yeah.
make up for that time of them boxing. It's like
No, no, they had gloves on them when they were in the womb.
they're born fighters, man, born fighters. Um,
Born
you
ready.
mentioned Canelo. Speaking of Canelo, thank goodness something boxing did right. Finally, they
Yeah.
announced Canelo versus Caleb Plant. You
Mhm.
were across the ring from Canelo twice with Golovkin. A lot of people felt you won. You guys won the first fight. How do you see this Canelo versus Caleb Plant fight, Abel?
I think Canelo's on a different level right now. I think Canelo is going to toy with Caleb Plant for
Ooh,
4 or 5 rounds, 6 rounds, and then do the
ooh.
same he did to him to Saunders. He's in a different level, man. He toyed with Saunders until it was time to put him away. And he put him away. The only guy, and I've said it for a while now, the only guy that I think can give Canelo a hard time, I'm not saying it's a definite win for him, is David Benavidez. David Benavidez is the only fighter that can give Canelo the 12-round difficult split decision.
But Caleb Plant is a guy who's defensive, who's slick, and Canelo historically has struggled with those types of fighters.
Yeah, the Canelo that you used to see. Saunders was slick. Saunders was a southpaw. Saunders was everything that you're not supposed to be against Canelo. And guess what? He destroyed him. Not only did he destroy him, he hit him with one shot that just shattered him. The guy is really, he's matured into a fighter that is so smart inside the ring and so powerful now and so sure of himself that it's going to be difficult to beat him. Like I said, I think David and maybe some of the guys at 175, like Better BF might have a great shot at him, and even Bivol at 68 actually could have a chance. It's just he's not the biggest puncher, but he'd have a chance because he's technically sound. But Canelo's going to be difficult to beat.
Yeah, I actually thought that Bivol was just as hard of a fight, if not harder, because his style is so weird. It's so awkward.
Yeah, he's just not big enough, I don't think, for Canelo. He's just not big enough in girth. You're going to have to be a big guy that can absorb and be at the peak of your game to be able to absorb what Canelo's going to give you. And
I'm sorry, Abel. I'm laughing because what you said sounded funny. My bad.
Why?
You said he's not big enough in girth.
In size, yes, in size.
My bad, Abel.
Keep your mind out of the gutter, man.
Yeah, I know.
That's why I say Better BF, because Better BF is a full 75-pounder. He's a big man. Bivol is just not big enough. David is a big man also. That will be 185, 190 by the time they step through the ropes. But Better BF, what's his name? David, I think would be the ones that would trouble Canelo. And I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this: if Golovkin got back to where he was when those fights were, if he's able to get back to that point, he's had some time off. He can give Canelo a hard time. The one thing about Golovkin is he's very durable. He has a great chin, and he can crack. So if he goes out and fights Canelo, if he gets himself back into where he used to be, I think that's the top, the three guys that could give Canelo a hard time.
A lot of people would think Canelo might be the underdog in those fights, but I think his speed is really what gives him a big advantage against all three of those guys, right?
No, I don't think he'd be the underdog. I think he'd be the favorite.
Well, against Benavidez? No, I think Benavidez would be maybe slight favorite.
Yeah, I would say it's 49-51 if you want to go there. But the thing you have to do with Canelo is you have to attack Canelo. You cannot let Canelo come to you and do what he wants to do. If you keep him thinking, and if you hit him enough and hard enough so that he has to respect, then he doesn't get to do the things that he wants to do. With Saunders, by the time the fifth round came along, he was in a stroll in the park. I mean, he was doing whatever he wanted. Mentally, I'm not talking about he's hitting him with anything he wants to do. Just he's slipping, he's sliding, he's doing all the things. He's having fun.
What is it? We got a transformer talking to us? What's going on here? I think it's your audio, Abel. Is that mine or yours? No, we're having some audio issues. I don't know. We apologize to everybody that. Hold on 1 second while we go ahead and fix. Yeah, I think it is your phone, Abel.
Oh, my phone knows. Just,
yeah, I think I fixed the problem. Okay. I hope. Yeah. Better BF. I see a path there for Canelo to win. I just think he's too slow, just walks in straight lines. What do you think about that?
But he's going to take everything Canelo gives him. He's got enough of a pedigree that he's going to be able to handle the I'll say it in a stupid way, the excellence of Canelo right now. But he's big enough so that he's going to be able to take. Now that he's slow and Canelo stops him late, okay, that's a possibility because he's faster, because he's a smaller guy, but he's powerful. So those are the three guys in my book, I'm telling you.
I don't know, man. Better BF. There's only so much a dude could take, right, Marcus? Like,
well, look, I don't know if Canelo will be able to dish out enough while taking enough against Better BF. I definitely think the style that Canelo would fight, he'd have to fight more lateral movement. I don't think that he's got the firepower to go straight head to head with Beterbiev and walk him down. I just don't think so.
That's exactly so. Exactly. And how much can he take while he's doing that? How much does he absorb while he's trying to land his?
I don't know. I just think he'd make Beterbiev miss a lot, to be honest.
I don't, I think that where he would be making the miss, Beterbiev is not just a one-shot puncher, and moreover, he's a thudding puncher too. So if Canelo blocks it, he's still going to be getting that muscle tissue broken down in the arms. I think that that's the toughest fight that there is for Canelo, considering his styles. Canelo would have to be on his bicycle versus Beterbiev, definitely.
And while Canelo's trying to do his thing, he's going to expose himself. He's going to be there. And the Beterbiev is pedigree in his past. He's gonna hit Canelo. Canelo's gonna absorb some shots, and Absolutely. It doesn't take very much from a big man like to break you down, just like you just said.
Especially we talk about Canelo, how much of a devastating body puncher he is. This will be the first guy that he'd be fighting that could break his ribs as well. So.
Right.
And the first guy in a long time that can have him peeing blood as well. So that's a hard fight for Canelo, man. That's a career changer.
In order to do that, he's gonna have to get close, right?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So he's gonna be there to be hit. So I that's why I think that those three guys are the only guys that could give Canelo a hard time right now.
And speaking of Marcus Brown, and we mentioned Marcus Brown earlier, and we just got off Beterbiev. Actually, WBC actually just ordered them to fight, so we may be getting a Beterbiev Brown fight. So Marcus Brown is coming off of that little debacle with Jean Pascal, and then coming back and getting a win. But he's hoping to get himself together and back in the mix at 175. So we'll see what happens with Marcus Brown.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna tell you what. It's not his skills, and it's not his fights in the ring that he's having a hard time with. I think it's outside the ring that he's having these issues, and it affects you. It affects you mentally. It affects you training. It affects you in a lot of things leading up to a fight. And unfortunately for him, he is having those issues. But he's a heck of a fighter.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, he is tremendously skilled as well. On an ending note, Abel, just overall, because this episode is about Manny. To you, what do you think is Manny's greatest moment as a fighter, or like a moment that sticks out to you the most?
I've 4 or 5 of his fights have been some of my favorite fights that I've seen, just because of the style that Manny has is attractive to just about every fight fan, I think. Anyway, I think his comeback for me would be the comeback after he got stopped by Juan Manuel Marquez, to be able to, when everybody counted him out, to be able to come back and do the things that he's done. I think that's a highlight for me in a career of a boxer. But maybe it's coming from a coach too, that you don't roll over and play dead once you lose or once you look bad. But I think he's had so many great fights that it's hard to tell, man. It's really hard to tell for me.
Yeah,
I think his fights with Marquez, like, to me, you can't mention Manny without Marquez.
No, or no, just Manny with all the great fighters of this era.
I see Danny in the chat says the Hatton KO. That was one that I had been looking at. That was one of a special moment, man. That was one of the most devastating. That was a true hook. It looked like he hit him with a fish hook. The way it went in, and you could tell it shut off everything, and Hatton was completely asleep. Yeah. You go back to watching Manny versus my guy Eric Morales, and watching him put Eric Morales on the seat of his pants in the last fight, and Eric just kind of sat there, and he was like, "Shit, man, I can't beat him." You never saw that from him.
Yeah,
crazy.
But you know what though? The reason I say the fight with Marquez, that one where he got stopped, it's if you're mentioning Hatton, it happened to him too. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. The fact that he back as strong as he did, and when he was put out, it was just like Hatton was put out. They were sleeping. Yeah. But to come back and accomplish what he did after that, with all the distractions, and I mean the distractions of his homeland, I think he deserves a special spot in our heart.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Manny's one of the few guys that has been knocked out like that and has been able to have success. I think the only other guy that I can think of, like off the top of my head, is Duran, when he got starched out by Hearns face
Yeah.
first, and then he came back and was still successful.
Right.
Really, and Abel, you touched on a good point, man. That I kind of gleaned from talking to many fans sitting in press row. We were able to go up into some of the concourses, and there were parties going on up above. I hung out with a lot of Manny's people because that's who was holding the parties. And then talking to these people, man, the level of responsibility that they put on this dude, they are really putting him like he's a living savior. It's got to be tough for him. I mean, he's got broad shoulders for a little guy, man, and he's wearing it well. But just to hear the yearning in their voices, these people are talking about how devastated the Philippines are by the coronavirus and the suspect corruption in the government. And they're really looking at Manny Pacquiao to be the one that brings the Philippines back to the Philippines of the 60s, man. I mean, you hear this from these people. These people are serious, and I talk to the people I talk to. I tell you guys what, both of you, these folks said that they would rather have Manny be the president than to fight one more fight. No lie. Right. So anybody in the chat that has any dog in that race, talk about it if you feel the same way. But I mean, they really want him to be the president more than he's been their champion in boxing.
Yeah, well, you know that there's a scene in the movie. I mean, it's one of my, no, I shouldn't say favorite, one of my favorite boxing movies, in the Cinderella Man, where the wife goes into the church right before he fights Bear, and she walks in, and there's so many people in the church, and she says, "What are all these people doing here?" And she says, "They're here. They think that Jim is fighting for them." It's the same thing for Manny. Manny is fighting for them. He is their just said. And that's why I say that he may have the option to fight again, but he's got a responsibility, and he's got a built-in job already to do what he needs to do for his country.
I think as time goes on, and given the humanitarian side of Manny, I really think that his legacy is gonna be seen as even greater than what people see him now at this point.
Oh, absolutely. Especially, look, every country has their, maybe it's not so obvious in ours, but every third world country like that has their corruption. And if you can look at a guy and you can believe in a guy, as they do in Manny, and he goes in and he cleans things up in a way that hasn't been cleaned up, I think that's what they're looking for. That's what they're hoping for.
Yeah, no, very true. Hey, Abel, thank you so much for being here with us, man. It's always great seeing you, and hopefully we get to see you at some of the fights soon.
Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
All right, that was Abel Sanchez, trainer extraordinaire, trained many champions from over the years. Yair had to leave. He had a family engagement, so we thank Yair for being with us as well. Man, well, like I mentioned, I really, the only other figure that I think that has had people gravitate to him the way Manny has, with, running with a ton of people and just what he does for people in general, and ingraining himself in politics in his country, is Ali. And I know people are going to probably kill me in the chat for even mentioning Ali, because Ali is such a sacred thing. But I'm saying the only other person that reminds me, I'm not saying he is like Ali, but I'm saying the only other person that it reminds me of is that, because I don't think I've ever seen any other fighter that, has 50 people running with him while he trains in the mountains and just like everywhere he goes like that.
Yeah, man. He definitely has a vapor trail of people behind him, and it does resemble some of the work that you saw Muhammad Ali do with the iconic red sweatsuit, running on the racetrack or running in different places, man. I mean, I know a lot of these guys are kind of camp guys. Some of these guys are young fighters. I mean, but he, like Andreas Baker said in the chat earlier, man, Manny is a love boxer. Manny definitely is a love boxer. Manny is not just a love boxer, but Manny is a love person and individual, man. He definitely has transcended the sport of boxing, man. He's he's done well for himself. Absolutely.
Well, yeah. The only reason why, the other thing too is, I think as time goes on, and I don't know if his legacy will, or he'll be seen in a greater light than Floyd, just given because Floyd beat him. But I have a sneaky suspicion that his legacy and what he done um, in his career, on top of how he is with what he's done in his country with helping the poor people and all that, it's legacy wise, it's going to put him in a very unique and special place, and it might end up eclipsing everybody else that was a contemporary with him, because just like the message that he said, like at the end of the fight, where he implored everybody to like be good people, to help people out, and that like now he's feeling the tug that his mission is like helping the poor in his country, and that's something that he's always done, is help. I've seen him give money to poor people and homeless people and stuff like that. I just think over time that's going to add to his legacy.
Absolutely, man, and he's people's hero. Definitely people from other races. I don't want to go too far as to directly compare him to Muhammad Ali, because there definitely are some differences between the fights that they chose to take. I mean, number one, with Muhammad Ali taking on the U.S. government, man, for his rights, that's something that stands alone from most top athletes, true champion athletes. I'm not talking about.
You never know, man. Manny's speaking up against corruption in his country and all that, against a guy who's like a strongman dictator. So, maybe he's to the Philippines.
Still unfolding. Manny's story still unfolding.
Maybe he'll be to the Philippines what Ali was to over here, with everything that's going on over there.
Absolutely. And it's important, man. I know that in our sensational age of sports and journalism, we love to compare, but man, there's plenty space for all these guys that have done great things with their lives, with their bodies of work. It's unfortunate that we do a lot of comparison when their body of work speaks for itself. This is what they painted on the canvas of boxing. Recognize what they've got going on, man. It's just one of those things. Manny is a love person, but there's a lot of guys in boxing that'll go down in history, man. And I don't want to put people above one or knock one down to put one up,
It's funny. Someone's saying they want to see Victor Ortiz versus Ugas. Is that correct?
Victor Ortiz lost.
Wait, or Virgil Ortiz. I hope it's Virgil Ortiz.
Okay.
But I don't know. I think I think he means Victor Ortiz.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a line to get to Ugas, man. Ugas now is the guy. One of the guys in the division. It's going to be amazing to see what happens. And I do see Hurricane Hank saying what he went through with the U.S. Army. The thing with, that's another thing, man. When we look at guys that were heroes, that stood up. Joe Louis actually did go to the Army, though, bro. And his problems look like they happened after he got out.
But I still think, though, Joe Louis, his fight with Max Schlemming was still the most important fight in the history of boxing, just because of the background of World War II and all that.
Are you talking about the first or the second?
The one that the second, because the second one is where he knocked him out. The first one he got knocked out.
The first one where he got stopped. Yeah, there was pressure on their back for both fights, man. There was a lot of pressure on both, but that's the nature of the game. That boxing is a pressure-filled sport.
These guys, in general, sports is pressure. That comes with the territory.
Sports is pressure. That's what the thing is, man. It's just, I saw somebody earlier in the chat. They made a good point saying that, hey, a lot of folks are seeing that Manny's. They're seeing him as his prime self. We kind of got to recognize that he's gotten old, man. Time may have taken hold. I think
that's a lot of our athletes, bro. I think that's like with all of our favorite fighters. That's
what all of us, period. That's what all of us, period. It's like
we think of them like, oh, Manny's gonna blow through this guy, because we have that image of Manny just smashing people, or like, oh, Floyd's gonna knock out Logan, because we have that, that picture of Floyd just making people look foolish and everything.
Man, time marches on, like Metallica says, bro. Time marches on, dude. Just it is what it is. You know, I mean, guys get old, their legs go, you know, especially when you got a mover or somebody that's dependent on timing. At one point, Manny was kind of darting all over the place. Go back to the De La Hoya fight, go back to the Margarito fight. The way he was able to get the jump on these guys is against his lateral movement and straight punches. He was more accurate. You know, it's been a 2-year layoff, a tough opponent who was ready to fight. It was just, man, it was tough.
Father Time is the ultimate winner. In terms
man,
of
they say
athletic.
Floyd is 50-0. Father Time is like 1,241-0.
And that's what Pieter is saying. You know, Father Time is undefeated. Hey, you know, I'm just kind of curious, Marcus, and I know this is kind of off topic, but you said, you know, and I think, you know, a lot of people do have an opinion on this, that you said, you know, all sports is pressure.
Yeah.
What do you make of the whole Simone Biles thing?
You know, man, to be honest, like, you can't go into something and be like, oh, well, I don't know if she's really got mental health problems. You know, if she came out of her event because she didn't feel safe, I think that's what it was, right? She said that she went on the beam and she did like some type sort of twist and that she didn't know where she was. I don't know what the term was. I'm sure somebody in the chat can drop what the term was, but she kind of lost herself spatially. You know, she lost her nerve for the moment. Instead of saying, well, that's weak. If she did lose her nerve and she showed heart to come back and do it again, knowing that the world was talking about her, you know, she deserves a little something, man. It's tough, you know, but I just wonder, look, and this is no slight to these new athletes. The pressure's not new. The pressure's not new. That's what is special about being a champion. That's been special about being a gold medalist. The first time around when she dealt with it, she was able to take it. You know what I mean? I'm sure that it was compounded by being expected. I think that's what it is. The expectation of the fans is probably something that's eating folks up. You look like a youngster like Ryan Garcia. I think, you know, like Abel said earlier, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Ryan has a whole bunch of social media followers. Every post he does goes viral. You know, when you start feeling the pressure to have those type of performances and then the opponent gets kind of boosted up and becomes more suitable to defeating you. I mean, you know, somebody said, hey, man, it makes pipes or it breaks pipes or it makes diamonds, brother, the pressure. So it is what it is.
Like at first when I heard about it, I was kind of like scratching my head. I'm like, the pressure, like what the heck? Like, it's not like she hasn't been in an Olympics before, and it's not like she hasn't won gold medal before. So I was kind of like, what's going on here? Like, it's not like she's not used to the pressure. So I thought like, well, then she's having a mental lapse. She's having a confidence issue. But, you know, I read a thing where like the ADD medication that she takes like helps her like focus. And that because in Japan, I guess you can't take ADD. And if she wasn't taking that, you know, then I was kind of like, okay, well, that makes sense as to why someone would have a freak out or at least, you know, question themselves, you know. But then again, it's like, but then again, bro, this comes with the territory. You're an athlete. This is the name of the game, is performing when there's the most pressure, and you know that coming in.
Yeah. I was gonna say, man, I don't know what the medication that she's using, but if she's competing on Adderall or whatever one of those meds are, when you start thinking about that, and then you start thinking about a person on the balance beam, where Adderall, for all intents and purposes, seems to narrow down the field of concentration. That sounds maybe like a performance-enhancing drug a little bit, man, doesn't it?
And,
I mean,
you know, that's crazy because
like
a lot of people,
bro.
a lot of, not a PD, but a lot of people I've heard have said like, well, wait a second, that's giving her extra focus.
That
you know,
does
like
give you extra focus. I mean,
hell yeah.
Because considering the fact, are you saying, well, you've lost this much focus next to the
hell yeah, the YouTube School of Medicine. That's right, Roland. YouTube School of Medicine, brother.
But I saw, yeah, man. Mark Young, appreciate the love. MJMP, man. Always happy to see you guys in the chat, brother. We're here, man. SS Chicago. I've been seeing you on there. You've been saying a lot, Holmes. Right?
He's telling us to stop the cap, though. He's telling us to stop the cap.
Hey man, look, bro, I'm just saying, hey, we don't know what, but for real, all jokes aside, don't know what Simone Biles was dealing with, nightmares or anything. We just kind of get a little fraction of the story and get to make an opinion without experiencing what she's experienced. So, kudos to her for getting back and medaling. Good job. Way to go.
Yeah, but I think I've seen a lot of people say this also. I think in general, a lot of people make the assumption that this new generation of athletes aren't as mentally resilient as the ones that came before them.
I would beg to say the yes. I would say, yeah. I would definitely say, yeah. I think that when we look at a toughness factor you look at the rules, the rule changes, there's a lot of things in sports that have kind of changed. You look at basketball, you look at football, you got all these receivers running around doing all these extra dances, but you don't have to worry about Dennis Smith and Steve Atwater and all these big hitters like Jerry Rice and Andre Reed had to. You don't have to worry about getting knocked out like Jim Kelly in the Super Bowl and it being just a highlight. Jim Kelly's getting carried off the field and he can barely even, he's looking around like, what's going on? And it's just a highlight. So yeah, Andreas Baker says it. Yeah, soft. I would beg to say that, man. I don't want to say these guys are soft because I don't want nobody to run up on me and get exposed for being soft. But, man, honestly, bro, it definitely, I would say, yeah, it's a little different. If you reincarnated some of these old school cats and got them back in there, I think they would run the table on a lot of these youngsters in sports. Definitely.
Yeah, I think that's like a big topic of discussion. And, it bleeds into so many things about, how this new generation is being raised, the effect of social media and what that's playing into their lives, into their confidence, and into their mental psyche. It opens up a whole new level of criticism I don't think was around.
They got stress cards they got stress cards in the military, bro. They got stress cards in boot camp where these cats can pull a card up and be like, drill sergeant, I'm maxed out right now. I'm at my maximum stress load. You know what I mean?
I had no idea that was even a thing.
Yeah, dude, they got like stress cards, man, for them to be able to kind of give you a back off thing. Down the line, we'll see how that goes. But, man, toughness breeds character and character wins battles, man.
Dude, that's insane to me that they have that in the military. Military is supposed to make you so hard mentally, man.
There's a lot bleeding into it that a lot of folks' opinions militarily probably are being heard when you haven't bothered to put the gear on. You know what I mean? It's crazy. Like Danny said, stress cards now. I joined too early. Me too, bro. I joined too early, homie. I remember getting smoked day and night and having to walk around with full battle rattle on at 2:00 in the morning in the cold, bro. It doesn't seem like it's like that anymore, man. And you can see because, they look like for some intents and purposes, we're starting to see discipline issues in those areas. And I think in a lot of sports too, you're starting to kind of see discipline issues, man. Peter K says, happy birthday to Kobe. That's right. Happy birthday, Kobe, man. Rest in heaven, brother.
Yeah, so who's NJP saying if I was at the strip club on Saturday? No, bro, I was working till like 3 a.m. editing all the content.
There's so much boxing work going on when we go to these fights. You get irritated about anything that doesn't have to do with boxing, bro. Like it's not as, I wouldn't say that it's not fun because it's real fun, but there's a lot of work going on, man. A lot, and there's no hours.
Troy is saying like, hey, there's way more pressure now with social media. Now, if you get embarrassed, you get dragged 24/7 for months. That's true. That's something new that we didn't have to deal with. I guess, we get made fun of if something happened in school, but it was only to the extent of the people that were there. Now, it's the whole world gets to see, that moment. And yeah, that messes with you.
Well, yes, there was ESPN and all those things before.
I'm talking about like, something would happen to you and a classmate films it and shares it on, Instagram or TikTok.
Hey, that's definitely, that's part of your road to the top. Unfortunately, if you're taking that road on to be an athlete or to be in that lane, there's no shortage of people that have went there before you, that have went through humiliation. Like I love the Ultimate Warrior, bro. And I don't know if any of you guys love the Ultimate Warrior like I do, but Warrior's got these things on YouTube called Injections of Inspiration. And if he's ever meant anything to you, you should listen to them. These are his insight, and the things that he's talking about are so deep about life, where he talks about exposing yourself and being willing to be humiliated, willing to be screwed over. You know what I'm saying? Willing to be beat out of your money. You know what I'm saying? But doing it all for what you love, right? I mean, it's a special thing, man. And the Ultimate Warrior did die, bro. Rest in heaven, Holmes. He did die.
Bro, you're gonna get so jealous. I met the Ultimate Warrior randomly here at my gym down the street, bro. I walked in and he's on the leg extension machine, and I do like a double take, like the hell? And I go to the treadmill and I just keep looking, and he saw me that I kept looking at him like, no freaking way. What the hell is the Ultimate Warrior doing here in freaking Fullerton? So I went over to him and I said, hey, Warrior, I'm a huge fan, man. I loved you as a kid. I just want to shake your hand, bro. And he's like, okay, brother. And he reached out his hand, and you know, he still had a freaking iron grip. And I was just like, holy crap. Freaking Ultimate Warrior. What was his name? Like Jim Hewitt or Jim Hewlett?
Hellway, bro.
Yeah. Count Drago. How does the Kambosos versus Lopez situation work out? Let's see if Ugas versus Ortiz Jr. for the WBA, Ennis versus Josecito Lopez, King Kong Ortiz versus White need opponents. Makes sense. Kambosos versus Lopez.
Wait, hold on. Wait with that real quick. Let me just ask you a question. What would be the reason that Ortiz would jump over Ennis for a title shot and not Ortiz? Oh, you talking? Oh, that's because they're friends, huh? They're Ortiz and Josecito Lopez are friends, so they can't fight each other. So
yeah, well, Ortiz is number 1 or number 2 in the WBO, I think. But Kambosos versus Lopez is happening.
WBO, he is, yeah.
Yeah, I think Kambosos versus Lopez is happening on a Tuesday. That Tuesday of the Wilder versus Fury 3 fight, they just announced today that it's going to be on a Tuesday in New York on pay-per-view for, get this, guys, $20 on pay-per-view. It's a big risk. You know, I've been calling for them to lower the pay-per-view prices for a very, very long time. I had a chat with with Steven Espinoza about this, and he pretty much said, like, look, I agree with you. I think they should be cheaper, especially now during the pandemic where a lot of people are out of work. But no one wants to take the risk to lower the price of pay-per-view and get the same amount of buys that they would get if they didn't change the price. And then in that situation, we end up with less money because it's so hard because of the pirating. But that's a big risk that Triller is taking with that.
Well, one thing that if they're taking away from the price, they definitely need to up on the marketing because we're not hearing nearly enough. We're not seeing many videos. We're not seeing much of anything that's kind of getting us fired up. And like he says, just like that, Count Drago's not a casual. He says, how does the Kambosos Lopez situation work out? We're all kind of feel like we're in the dark. And now we just heard that the fight's going to be on a Tuesday. That's interesting, man. I
think Mike Coppinger,
Tuesday night fights. But that's, hey, we'll see.
I think Mike Coppinger reported that, or he was one of the first ones to report that as well. Las Vegas, is that Leon or Leon? I'm not sure, but what do you think about Figueroa versus Fulton? Ooh, I think that's a tougher fight for Figueroa than Fulton.
It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be a tough fight. Yeah, Fulton is definitely has a super sharp offense, coupled by sharp defense. Brandon likes to throw a lot of sticks into the wind and see what happens. He is accurate. He's got a hell of a chin. I've been side by side by both. I would say that Fulton might be a little more bulky, but Brandon's body looks bigger.
Brandon's huge.
He looks like a bigger guy. He looks big.
Here's the thing, though. Like he's huge reach, but he doesn't use it in the way you would think he would use it in terms of distance. You know, he uses it to kind of overwhelm you with his offense. The thing is, absolutely, he throws a lot, but he also leaves himself to get hit a lot.
Definitely, man. You know, he's durable for the weight class. He cuts down super hard. He's another guy, man, that has kind of mastered that cut. I think that's a real good fight. We interviewed Stephen Fulton Jr., Cool Boy Steph, and he said, "Hey, I'm gonna knock this cat out, no questions asked." He told me straight out, "I'm gonna put him to sleep." That fight with me and him goes night night. I'm gonna break out something new for this fight. So we gotta wait and see exactly what Cool Boy has in store for Brandon. But we know Brandon's gonna be in shape, and he's gonna bring it.
Oh no, he has to be in shape for a guy that throws that many punches in a fight.
Man.
Yeah, man.
He literally I was like, I was with him when he was training. He empties the whole can, man. It's impressive. He empties everything you can see, and it's a trip because the people around him, they aren't people that are like, "Oh yeah, you're done, you're finished." These are people that, as he's suffering, they're just looking at him like, it is what it is. We'll deal with you afterward, but you need to commit your soul and go forward, man. It brutal, hot as hell in that gym. I don't envy him, bro. The money's nice, it looked like, but damn.
Yeah, Gilbert is saying like I low key feel Fulton is going to be winning at first, and then Brandon's going to stop him late. That's kind of like how the Neri fight was, right? Like Neri was having success.
Neri looked like he was kind of having his way, but like I talked about before, the thing that you have to on a previous show, like I said before about Brandon, you got to be careful with Brandon, because when you open up and throw on Brandon, he throws those little sneaky dagger uppercuts to the solar plex. We watched him do it his last time out versus Neri, and he was kind of doing it the whole fight. He's one of these guys that punches in between your shots, a lot like Terrence Crawford does. He looks like that's part of his game plan. He doesn't just let you get off. If you're going to throw 4, he's going to throw 2 in your 4. So he's a dangerous guy to fight with.
A lot of people are mentioning the Pacquiao fight. Dude, that should have been the co-main event. That right there, that would have gotten everybody just hyped for the main event. Like Guerrero and Ortiz, it started off strong, but like as it continued, like just kind of lost my interest.
Yeah, man, definitely Victor Ortiz is another one of those guys that is a tough guy that's dealing with life. He's dealing with life. He's trying to stick around and be devoted to boxing, but life's a bitch, man. You know what I'm saying? It's a tough thing, and shout out to him for continuing to try to be out there. But yeah, I definitely thought that Pacquiao was a good fight, to be honest with you. Just like my man says in the chat here, Nebrito's services, that Pacquiao looked like he was kind of losing, bro.
He got the knockdown, and then he got knocked down.
They traded knockdowns. Yeah, they traded knockdowns.
Dude, let me tell you, Ceja's body work was really bothering him.
Man, you can see it when Pacquiao was ducking down. The way both guys were ducking down, bro, they were enduring body punches, much like you remember Bloodsport back in the day, and you watch these guys. Yeah. I mean, it looked like at some point, man, they were hitting each other to the body so hard, man. Where Yair and I were, you could hear the shots, pow, 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 pow. I mean, this was a hard fight, but everything with Pacquiao, great Pacquiao, but my brother, you won the right to be Gary Russell Jr.'s mandatory.
Wait, is he ranked in the WBC?
Who?
Pacquiao?
That was the eliminator.
Nah, was it?
Yeah, that's an eliminator, dog.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
That was an eliminator, man. Can you imagine? I mean, Pacquiao gets hit a lot to fight Gary Russell Jr. He likes that rock'em sock'em style, and we know Gary Russell don't play that. So, but I think that Gary, who I got close with in Carson, bro, looked like you finally got somebody that I think Pacquiao is going to step up and take the fight, no question. He wants his belt. I
don't know, man. I think Gary might be a little too much for Pacquiao.
Oh man, Gary's too much for most guys at 26, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, he's tough as hell. But I'm saying Pacquiao is a guy you can tell he's not going to be like, well, I'm good with just standing here and waiting for him to get off the belt. He's going to knock on the door and be like, nah, I want to fight. Let's sign. I hope they do.
I think the word of the day is girth. Oh man. Yeah, we got an interview with Gary. I got an interview. I spoke to him like in depth for like 20 something minutes. I want to say a few weeks ago. So I'm going to go ahead and release that hopefully this week. But we have come to the end of the live chat. So thank you guys all for tuning in and watching us. If this is the first time you're watching us, please subscribe and know that we're going to be moving to Tuesday at 5:35 because of the football season coming up. So when is that, Marcus?
Tuesday is going to be the 14th of September.
Okay.
That's going to be looks like our first Tuesday show, right, Marcos?
Yeah.
Tuesday, September 14th.
Oh man, that's the week of the wait. Oh no, we don't have a
De La Hoya. The week after the De La Hoya.
Yeah. Okay. I was gonna say that's the week of Caleb versus Canelo, but that's now happening in November. So
yeah, that's it. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So it's only temporary. It's only for football because a lot of you guys like football and be watching football, and it makes sense because majority of people do watch Monday Night Football.
Peter K, we was good until you started talking about the Rams. Look at this guy. He is in the chat talking this Rams talk here, brother. You
He's a Rams fan, bro.
Division, wrong team, though, man, because red and gold never gets old, brother. Mr. Awesome, you're very welcome, man, and thank you for tuning in, man. Hank Gifford, Elmar, Peter K is still there with these Rams, man. Hurricane Hank, Elmar, Montadilla, I hope I said that right, Spencer and Natural. Man, we just appreciate you guys, man. Jesus and Victor, Jesus M, we appreciate you guys, man, taking time. Andreas Baker, we appreciate Edward Alcantar, man. We appreciate the time. Ryan H, of you guys just taking time, man, to hang out, bro. We worked a lot for you guys this weekend, and it was all fun, and we really look forward to the next time, brother. It's going to be dope.
We want to go ahead and thank Abel Sanchez for joining us, and hopefully next week we'll have Ray Boom Boom Mancini joining us in the live chat. I'm gonna talk to Ray in person because I'm going to Cleveland and work that out. He had to travel. We were originally supposed to have him today, but thank you for Abel once again for being here with us and chatting with us. Let's get one last round of likes, everybody. Thank you so much. Comment on the comment section below if you feel that Manny should retire or what he should do after this fight, or what if Ugas should go into a fight with Errol Spence Jr. Always like to hear your feedback. We go through the comment section as well. So for Yair and Marcus, I'm Marcos, reminding you guys to follow us on social media at FightUpTV on Instagram and Twitter. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next. I don't know if we can do the show next Monday, bro. I got to fly back on Monday. Hopefully, we'll be able to do the show next Monday.
Yeah, we'll see, man. But in the meantime, bro, Count Drago, I see it's red and gold until we're dead and cold. I'll say SF till death, man. Definitely going to be a year
49er fans
looks like to be unseating. Jimmy, right. See what happens, huh?
We got to go. All right, you guys. Have a good night. Take it easy.